She ran off several days ago with her older boyfriend. She's in high school. He's college age or beyond. And his name is Jason Todd. Hey everybody, Blake T. Wilde here, and welcome back to the Comic Schtick Podcast, the podcast where comics are my shtick. As always, I am discussing kind of just whatever it is I'm talking about this week. I suppose that's how any podcast works. The biggest thing I'll be discussing today, aside from just interesting comic book news, are my pitches for DC Absolute Comics. Scott Snyder, I know you're watching. I know that you probably have a Google notification alert for your name and DC Absolute Comics, so tell me what you think. This episode, of course, is also brought to you by my Patreon and my Etsy shop, where you can purchase physical copies of my comics, The Custodians, Agents of Cross. Every issue comes with a free head sketch of any character of your choosing. Or if you want to be purely digital, my Patreon has the comics at high resolution there as well. Let's just get right into this, because I put not a shocking amount of work, but a shocking amount of interest from my end. I wrote all of the things that I will be discussing later in about maybe 2 hours when I was at work. So don't tell anybody. But I had a blast, and it was a lot of fun. So I do just want to get into it. But first, we got to talk about some other stuff. And of course, as always, there are time codes in the description if you are listening or just watching along on YouTube. So if you want to skip ahead, do that, I guess. So, Brian Michael Bendis is officially returning to Marvel Comics with Avengers 34, the milestone 800th issue of the Avengers, features a story written by Bendis with art by Mark Bagley. Mark Bagley is coming out of retirement again to do this. And this is Bendis' first Marvel comic since 2018. It's been quite some time since Bendis came all over DC Comics, and now he's coming on home to Marvel. And I saw an interesting comment, which it has nothing to do with him coming back to Marvel or his work at DC, really. It was more so how he was marketed. Because obviously, he made his name Brian Michael Bendis. All three names, everyone knows that. That's what it was on all of the works. You know, you see Bendis on the title, you're like, oh, Brian Michael? But when he went to DC, he was rebranded. DC didn't want that M association, because, and you know, Michael starts with an M, and what else starts with an M? Marvel. So, oh, no thank you. So the person pointed out that when Bendis has been at DC, he's only been referred to as Brian Bendis. And now that he's back at Marvel, we can once again call him Brian Michael Bendis. He's definitely going to be taking over the Avengers, right? Like, that's where this is leading to. Surely. He's coming back just in time to produce one of, if not multiple, events that I am sure will in some way tie in with Avengers Doomsday and Avengers Secret Wars. Which got me thinking, does Marvel not want to put all of their event eggs in the one Hickman basket? Because Hickman has said that Marvel can't afford to pay him on an ongoing series anymore. So we're never going to get a Hickman's Avengers or a Hickman Fantastic Four or whatever. The build up to Secret Wars and what we had in the 2010s. He is too well known. His contract is too high for what Marvel, God forbid, would ever pay anybody creative or artistic, or working to keep their company alive in any sort of interesting, meaningful way. Why would they do that? So I don't think he's really, we're never going to see that. Anything like that. It's a shocker that he was even on Ultimate Spider-Man for as long as he was, I think. But I feel like there might be some, I'm sure it's just a small majority that is quite loud, who is are people turning against Hickman? I don't turning against is a strong sort of phrase. I think he might just not be bringing in like what Marvel wants is what I'm thinking. Like, what has he done? He did, the Ultimate Return and the new Ultimate Universe, which was originally meant to be for Donny Cates. He had the whole thing planned. Unfortunately, Donny Cates got into a terrible car accident, and it never came to fruition. So Hickman comes in. Hickman also did, Krakoa was the last biggest thing, I think, before that. But between then and since then, what has he done? He did Gods, G.O.D.S. I don't know what it stands for. Gosh, almost didn't see it. If you misspell some words, because it wasn't a popular book. It did not sell very well. The Gods book, which was supposed to be, if I remember correctly, like a big reinvention of the Marvel, like, magic side of the universe, with characters that were kind of just pastiche stand-ins for existing characters, which is already a tub of worms in and of itself, because that just brings into the equation, oh, well, you don't use the established characters because somewhere in the contracts, I'm sure there's still something which says you get royalty rights or you get royalty payments for if these characters are adapted in anything. So if you make new characters, that's how it was for quite a while. I don't know. God only knows what kind of terrible contracts Marvel creatives have to work with nowadays. But there was that. Then there was Imperial, I think. Is that what it was? Imperial? I didn't read it. I don't know. But yeah, right. It was Imperial. I don't know what the hell that one was, but I don't think it was as. Sorry, I just cracked my knuckles. I don't think that was a big return on the investment that Marvel executives wanted it to be, or like Marvel editorial. The thing that barely exists with staples and duct tape. But I didn't hear too many interesting things. Of course, I'm not the audience for it. I don't follow really a lot of modern comics. Like Absolute DC, I follow along with just because I see posts about it on DC Comics Circle Jerk on Reddit. Which I personally think is the best comic-based subreddit on that website. It is a shockingly wholesome community of people who actually just enjoy comic books. But that's kind of how I keep up with it. But you know me, I don't read many contemporary books. I think it's a chore to keep up with. I have way too many things I've bought already. I have a stack of comics behind me on the floor that I need to make a video about. It's like this big of books that I've bought at the dollar like bins and cheaper at conventions that I've gone to in the past year that I still haven't recorded. So I just got too much stuff to really keep track. But from what I saw, based on comments online, Reddit, not too much on YouTube. My whole premise, I'm getting off base here. If you can tell, I'm very caffeinated as well. Is that I don't know. What I have seen from Jonathan Hickman's recent stuff, it seems very well done, obviously. He's a talented creative, he's a talented writer and artist. But I don't know if I'm only seeing the bad stuff because I don't follow it closely enough, or if that's just slowly becoming the overwhelming majority, like tastes are changing, the cultural zeitgeist is reverting to something anew. And Hickman's works, because I think it's a combination of the fact that, one, Marvel isn't going to pay him to do anything long and extraneous and detailed, so there's not going to be a lot of build-up, so it has to be done in like 6 to 12 issues or whatever. 2, he is just, I don't think he really wants to work on these big events, which is all that Marvel's wanting to give him, because I can't imagine just how annoying that would be. Especially, as someone who makes my own comics and everything, and loves telling stories and coming up with ideas, as you'll see from the ridiculous stuff I came up with later in the episode. I can't imagine how annoying it must feel like, he could have the next great Black Panther series in mind, and it's like 56 issues long. Is a, like, you know, A, B, and C, Act 1, Act 2, Act 3, just wholly laid out. Marvel would never let him do that. They relegate him instead to, like I said, a short, brief event that other people can build off of. Which isn't necessarily a bad thing, but when that's the only thing you get to do, I'm sure at this point he just feels like he's riding out his contract until he can move to something else, seemingly independent work, and going back to indie comics at Image, or maybe DC Comics. Imagine Jonathan Hickman going to DC and writing the next greatest Superman's Pal series. So, I think, this is all to say, I think Bendis is getting returned, and he is now taking, or he's going to take, that mantle that Hickman has had for, what, the past 8 to 10 years, I guess? Because really that does kind of coincide. What was it, 8 years ago? Yeah, that was 2017. That it really does coincide with where Bendis was and where Hickman was. 2015, Hickman explodes even more than he already was. Secret Wars is the culmination to years of his work on Fantastic Four and the Avengers. And, you know, his stuff in the Ultimates and everything else. Bendis leaves 3 years after that, 2018-ish or so. Hickman, we start to see boom, 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 boom. He starts stepping up higher and higher. And now he's at that precipice where, you know, everything that I've noted before has happened. And Bendis, I don't know what the fuck he's been doing at DC. I don't know. He did that Walmart Batman comic that everybody loves. He aged up Jonathan Kent and Rogol Zar. But I really do think we're going to be seeing a lot of Brian Michael Bendis coming back. I think Marvel, because he is such an established, well-known name, not that Jonathan Hickman isn't, but Bendis he was all over the place 20 years ago. And nostalgia money is a huge thing. We are in the speculator market 2.0, as I have been saying for the past couple years. So that is going to be something that they're really going to play heavily into. There's going to be Bendis nostalgia. There's going to be Bendis-themed blind bags. Bendis bags. And it's just going to be a corporate hell. But I do think that Bendis is going to be brought in. And like I was saying, I'm all over the place. I apologize. I do think Marvel is more willing to pay him than they are with Jonathan Hickman because of those reasons that I just listed. And he's going to take over probably the Avengers. That seems most likely. That was a big thing for him back in the day. You know, in the mainstream Marvel universe at least. So that comes back. Avengers, it's kind of been waning in interest. It's always waned in interest ever since it was created. But we have 2 big Avengers films coming out next year and the year after that. So, synergy. And I fully expect to see at least 2 events next year that has Bendis as the main writer and architect behind. Maybe they'll try the same thing. Maybe, what if they get Bendis and Hickman on some grandiose event, and, you know, that could be Hickman's last hurrah before his contract expires, and he finally escapes the devilry of the mouse. There is at least one thing that Bendis has confirmed, and that is that he is reuniting with Sara Pichelli for another Marvel project in 2026. People really want to believe, and I think it makes sense as well, so I believe it too, that this is going to be another DC Marvel comic crossover with Spider-Man, Miles, and Superman, Jonathan Kent. Sal at Comic Pop was proven correct. I think, if I remember correctly, where he theorized that the reason that Spider-Man and Superman were not present in the Batman-Deadpool stuff is because Marvel and DC plan on doing it next year, which would, I think, be an anniversary of some sort of the original Superman-Spider-Man crossover. So that makes all the more sense. And, the main story could be... It could just be Superman, Spider-Man, Spider-Man, Superman. And it's both of them. It's the two Spider-Man and the two Superman just coming together. Maybe the Marvel one focuses a bit more on like Peter Parker and Clark Kent, and then the DC one is Jonathan Kent and Miles as the like tag-along secondary role character. But I'm down for that. I always liked Sara Pichelli's art. I like how she did Miles for the most part. I think it was pretty good. It'd be neat to see her come back, because I don't think she's really worked on Miles Morales really, like, since the inception, has she? So it would be quite neat if it is an aged-up Jonathan Kent, or John Kent, I suppose I should call him. It's not Superman's dad and teenage Miles Morales hanging out, although that would be funny. So seemingly it's going to be aged up Jonathan Kent, because that's Hickman's doing, and aged up Miles Morales. So I would like to see how Sara Pichelli, conveys an older Miles. Because really we haven't seen him too much older, except for maybe like an alternate reality here or there where he's an adult. But I think that would be just a neat thing, just to see what she can do with it, like, as the co-creator of the character, how she projects her own thoughts into how he would grow up and what he would look like as like a young adult or in his 20s, or I don't know how old John Kent is supposed to be. Old enough to be a man, I guess. But that's not the only sort of Marvel, DC creator swapping around companies and doing new contracts, because Phillip Kennedy Johnson is officially going exclusive with Marvel. He's hopping ship with old Brian M. Bendis. The Infernal Hulk, which hits stores this week, is also... Because for the longest time, he's, I guess, been just doing both for a while. He's been doing the Hulk, and which in turn has become the Infernal Hulk, which is the one where he's, like, stitched down the middle or whatever. But he's also done work on Batman and Robin at DC Comics, which is officially ending in February with number 30. So that's a good run. Yay! That's at least 2 volumes worth in a trade paperback. And he is also finishing up, I suppose, the Adventures of Superman, the Book of L, which is having its 6th issue in February. And I guess, something else Superman related. I don't really know. I don't follow it. I know his name. I recognize it. Did he do a Beta Ray Bill thing? I think he did. I don't recall. But, sure, neat. I hope it goes well for him. It seems like if Marvel is going to make him an exclusive like that, they really want to start pushing Hulk. So I don't know what that means in terms of just thinking like synergistically with the MCU and Marvel Studios and everything like that. It would help if I was more familiar with Phillip Kennedy Johnson's bibliography, but I'm not. So I can't really speculate too much on, I'm sure he's just doing good work that they like, and I know that the Batman and Robin series has been well received and people really dig it, as has the Book of L. That is apparently some transgressive kind of like formula that is being given to the Superman sort of story arc, I suppose. But I haven't read either of them. Haven't read all 3 of them. Hulk, Batman and Robin, or Superman. Why do I host a comic book podcast where I discuss contemporary comic news when I don't read it? I don't know. Speaking of recently released comic books that I'm not reading and never plan to, well, I might read some of these other ones. I definitely don't plan on reading this one. Batman number 163 by Jim Lee and Jeff Loeb, delayed till the end of March 2026. May as well have just said 2027 at this point. It is Hattush Part 1. It's the final issue, I think, of Hattush, which has been delayed now for 7 months. And if you are unaware, the reason that I said it's part 1 of Hattush, aka Hush 2, is because it was originally meant to be these first set of issues, and then like a year or 6 months, or I don't know what the break in between was going to be, there was supposed to be Hattush 2, part 2, which was like a follow-up mini-series. I don't think that's ever gonna happen. I truly don't think Hattush is getting Hattush part 2. Good God, that is insane. Who could have seen this coming? Who could have seen a Jim Lee artwork done book being delayed this long? It was just about everybody, I think. Again, I don't know if anybody really wanted this, because I've never seen any love for it. I see love for the original Hush all the time, and I just still don't get it. I don't care about Hush, which is why, you can see the video on my channel. I think it's purely a nostalgia factor is why the reason why people like Hush. It's kind of like the Goonies. I hate the Goonies. Everybody loves the Goonies because they saw it when they were kids. I saw it after I got drunk one night and went to the movie theater with a couple people as an adult. And I don't like it. Hattush is... I don't even know. I truly don't know what Hattush is about. And since this is a DC-centric episode, let's discuss DC's official announcements for the relaunch of Vertigo Comics in 2026. So this is, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 launch books have been announced. The first is The Nice House by the Sea, which is actually issue 7, because that's been coming out for some time, by James Tynion IV, Alvaro Martinez Bueno, and Jordi Belair. Following the survivors of Walter's Hexagon experiment, the series explores the terrifying consequences of escape and the threat it poses to what remains of humanity. I don't know what this book's about. I've heard good things. Seems to be some kind of horror sci-fi thing, I suppose. I remember when it was announced and when it was coming out initially, and I totally forgot about it until I saw this article. Next one, I think the rest of these, except for one and... I think just one. I think the rest of these are all, like, original ideas. And the only other one is an original idea. It's just a sequel to an original idea. You'll see when I get there. So the next one is Bleeding Hearts by Denise Camp. That's how you pronounce it, right? Like, I keep, he's come onto the scene hard and fast, and I love him. Just go watch don't watch it. It's not a great video. But I was getting really into Denise Camp recently. And I watched him on Mark Miller's podcast, which, if you are at all aware, with Denise's very, on his sleeve politics and worldview, strange that he went there. Even stranger is that it's not only a one-on-one with he and Mark Miller, someone who supported Brexit. It's also the fact that he's there with Mark Miller and like a bunch of his old white middle-aged friends. It's so weird. It's so odd because you can tell where the line is drawn between the people that are there, and I think the majority of them are not on Denise's side. Also, the name pronunciation. Am I saying it correctly? Is it Denise Camp? Because I'm thinking like Campo or Campagnano or whatever other surnames are similar. Because he is, I think, part Filipino, and for the most part, that's somewhat of a like Spanish etymological history. Colonization. But every video I've seen of people discussing it or just discussing his works, they always say camp. So what is it? I feel like it makes more logical sense that it would be pronounced camp, right? Anyway, it's written seemingly by Denise Comp with Stepan Morian and Matt Hollingsworth. A zombie named Poke or Pokey discovers his heart beating again, threatening his place in a society where death reigns supreme. Which elicits, what is that movie with Nicholas Hoult? Where he says, it's zombie Romeo and Juliet. Whatever that one was called. It's sort of eliciting feelings of that. I would love to see this. I really hope it is like a true kind of zombie society. I just think that sounds a lot of fun, and you can do some unique things with that. So I'd like to see more of that. And of course, it's Denise Comp, so it's going to be great, I'm sure. End of Life by Kyle Starks, Steve Pugh, and Chris O'Halloran. A top-tier hitman returns to his Midwestern hometown to take care of his dying father and confront his own mortality. This sounds depressing. Don't know if I'm interested in that one, just based off of the write-up, the blurb, the sales pitch. Let's move on. The Peril of the Brutal Dark, an Ezra Kane mystery by Chris Condon with Jacob Phillips, a noir detective tale that collides with magic, fascism, and a stolen artifact of unimaginable power. Don't know who the hell Ezra Kane is. Is that a character that these guys have created? Is that an established person somewhere in the comic world or pulp world or something? I don't know. I've never heard that before. Sounds neat, I suppose. Noir detective tale, seemingly set in the 30s or 40s if it's dealing with fascism. Right? And, if I remember correctly, I really like the cover art. So, that's neat. Honestly, I'll be truly honest. I'm probably not going to pick any of these up, but I might look into them in the future. This is the one I brought up earlier, which is just a sequel. It is 100 Bullets, The U.S. of Anger by Brian Azzarello and Eduardo Risso. Lono returns to America and reignites chaos, taking the nation's darkest impulses to their violent extremes. Very topical. Here's a reveal for you. I've never read any 100 Bullets books. I truly don't know what they're about. The Black Tower. Actually, no, it's just called Black Tower. Black Tower... Fuck me. Let me try this again. Black Tower, The Raven Conspiracy by Ram V and Mike Perkins. Wizard spies in the UK navigate a global Cold War over sorcery, revealing a hidden world of occult power. Sounds like it's in some way tied into the Peril of the Brutal Dark. That sounds pretty cool. And it's Ram V. He's working on New Gods right now that everybody's loving. That, I think, is the one that I'm most interested in. That sounds quite cool. This one is just hilarious. I love this title. And whoever came up with it, you should be proud. This is God, how am I... Necretaceous. Necretaceous? Right? Cretaceous. Necretaceous. It's like Cretaceous. Necretaceous by Tom Taylor and Derek Robinson. I'm always a fan of Derek Robinson. Fuck me, I can't speak. I'm always a fan of Derek Robertson's art. Scientists attempt to time travel to stop a zombie virus only to land 66 million years ago in the past among dinosaurs. Seemingly the zombie virus might also have an outbreak. I love this as well. I think this might be second in just what I'm interested in. Tom Taylor, I do like his stuff from what I've read. And it's another zombie thing, I just realized. But this, just from the picture and the cover art as well, it really seems like it's a journey to the center of the earth / lost in space group of people who find themselves in the midst of a horrible reality of abject terror and violence and horror. Because the characters, they all look goofy and silly sci-fi and like sort of a retro-futuristic ideal of what the future would be. And then they just get thrown into the past with zombies and dinosaurs and just thrown on its head. I love taking one genre and just shoving it into something else and seeing how the people of the genre A react to genre B. That's a quintessential sort of storytelling idea, and I am looking forward to this. So you might see me discuss it next year on the podcast. Fanatic by Grace Ellis and Hannah Templer. A woman's obsession with a comic book spirals into a deadly parasocial fixation on its creator. If I remember correctly, I think I like the art on the cover, and I do like how this sounds. This does seem like a very interesting, idea. And I do love stories about comics being told with comics, so I think this is going to be ranking number 4 on my... I don't know. I don't know why I'm ranking these in terms of my interest. The Crying Doll by Mariko Tamaki and Rosemary Valero O'Connell. A Jekyll and Hyde thriller about just how far a young woman would go to protect her best friend and who may or may not be a killer. Is the best friend gonna be her? Is that what that is? What does Jekyll and Hyde thriller mean if it's not just the same person? Just based on this write-up, I'm not too interested. A Walking Shadow by Simon Spurrier and Aaron Campbell. This is the final one. 8 strangers wake up chained to a boat in the woods with no memory, no escape, and no explanation. I don't know. I feel like that copy could have been written better. Just something about the final 3-bit. No memory, no escape, no explanation. I guess it works. It's just, I don't know, there's something about the no escape part that is odd to me. Like, I feel like that's implied by the fact that they're woke up chained to a boat in the woods. So, yeah, that's another one that doesn't really have too much intrigue for me based on just this little bit right here. What are your thoughts? Let me know in the comments below. Which of these DC Vertigo relaunch titles are you looking forward to the most? And, let me know in the comments. Everything else I've discussed thus far. So, now that we've reached about 35 to 40 minutes into the episode, I'm finally reaching the main topic of discussion. And that is me pitching to you, the viewer, and Scott Snyder, absolute DC comic series is this. I wrote 7 pitches for 7 different groups or comic series and characters. And, like I said earlier, this was a lot of fun. This just really got my brain chugging away like a steam engine on speed. And I had to stop myself from writing anymore because it's a lot. I don't know how long this is going to take me to get into. You can really tell which ones, like, sparked my creative ideas and my imagination because they're a lot more detailed than the others. I tried to put in, enough detail into each to make it feel like it's an actual, pitch for a series. But, some of these I kind of went a little crazy on. So let's get right into it. Here we go. Absolute DC Comics pitch number 1. Absolute Doom Patrol. Now I'm thinking, it's a 6 to 8 issue limited series. That's right, it's not going to be an ongoing, it's not going to be anything like that. It has a start and it has an end. Very specific tale is being told. This is going to be... These were the first 2 things that I brought to mind. Remember earlier when I mentioned taking one genre and smashing it into another? That's kind of what these first couple ones are. Especially for this, because it's an all-new universe with all this crazy shit happening. That's like the perfect material to work with. That's what I think made the MCU so popular initially, is that they took blank genre film and shoved comic book characters into it. So Absolute Doom Patrol is Fahrenheit 451 meets RoboCop. Cliff Steele is the main protagonist. He is the lieutenant of the Doom Patrol to Chief Miles Calder. Miles Calder sees himself as a veritable Uranos, which is the Greek god Uranus, or Uranus, so that'll be some, fun little jokes said by the characters behind his back. But it's spelled Uranos to stop the obvious jokes, specifically from the readers. Uranos is a Greek mythological figure and the father of the 12 titans of Greek myth. I'm very much into the Greek mythology and folklore and just the Greek kind of civilization as a whole. I think it's better than Rome. That's what don't at me, or let me know in the comments if I'm wrong. Again, can you tell I've had a lot of caffeine today? So, seeing himself as the father, as the modern day veritable father of these titans, he has gone about and selected a hand-picked group of metahumans to stable his Doom Patrol. They are Cliff Steele, Garfield Logan, aka Changeling, only called Beast Boy as a derogatory insult, Larry Trainer, Rex Mason, Mi Sun Quan, also known as Nudge, a obscure-ish telepathic DC character who was on the Doom Patrol in the main series, Lester Bukinski, the Electrocutioner, Victor Stone, not Cyborg, Kate Godwin, aka Coagula, another old Doom Patrol member from the 80s and 90s, I believe, or into the 2000s. I tried to get what obscure Doom Patrol characters I could that would just, slot in here. Scott Fisher, aka Scorch, from the 2000s, I think the Arcudi run of Doom Patrol. Tara Markov, which will come in pretty soon. Derek Coe, Black Spider, and introduced in the first issue as the audience surrogate, because we do need one. It worked in X-Men, it works in anything. That's my motto. Carrie Kelly. Yep, she is brought in because I absolutely love Carrie Kelly. She's my favorite Robin. I think she's the best. And I see her as being introduced in a sort of Judge Anderson way, from Judge Dredd and the Dredd film itself. So she would have that relationship that Anderson has with Dredd in the 2012 film, where, she's a capable, competent 20-something-year-old young woman who is brought onto the Doom Patrol task force and taken under the wing of Cliff Steele. So these two, Cliff Steele and Carrie, are the main characters. Everybody else is, they're there. They're side characters and whatever else, whoever. Miles Calder, as I noted, is obsessed with Greek myth. He believes that they are still present, that they truly existed in reality and are not just myths. Because, in his view, the world they inhabit, this world that's been corrupted by Darkseid and the Absolute Universe, that's actually due to the Greek god's capricious view of humanity, and his obsession is truly that of the Greek god Moros, the spirit of doom and chaos. Hence, him naming the group Doom Patrol. He also believes that Titanomachy, I've never heard anybody pronounce it, that is the war of the Titans, where they all either die or they are in prison or they escape and blah, blah. It's this huge, grotesque battle of the gods. It's a veritable Greek version of Ragnarok. Miles believes that has not happened yet, because if the Greek gods are real, they're still existing. And this apocalyptic idea of them and the Titans fighting has not occurred, but it will. And that means that all will perish when Earth is destroyed into absolute ruin. So he becomes this sort of mixture of mainstream Amanda Waller with the Task Force X and Suicide Squad with pieces of regular Miles Calder. And he works in the Doom Patrol organization with his second in command, Slade Wilson. Absolute Deathstroke. He's called the Deathstroke. Instead, you put a little "the" there, and it makes it seem more likely that that's that's a more of a code name, I feel, because he's the Deathstroke. He's the guy they send in. He's introduced, and that's when we learn that the Doom Patrol is actually some kind of U.S. military black op response to the ARCs and all of the genetic testing and whatever else that they're doing, and the ARCs across the world. The US does have them installed. I don't really know how that works. I don't know if it's ever truly explained how the ARCs function. But why wouldn't the US government do their own thing, just in case? We're not going to trust whoever the Joker is and his privatization of the company. We'll pay him, sure, we'll use it to our advantage, but we're also going to have the Doom Patrol there on the side. So, what is the Doom Patrol doing? they are tasked with the capture, experimentation, and sometimes re-education of metahumans in the Absolute Universe, or at least the United States and its territories. Again, Carrie Kelly is then introduced to us as the audience surrogate. She meets Cliff Steele. They have a great rapport right off the bat. Maybe Cliff Steele was like a friend of her father's back in the 90s in some war or something. In some way that they have a connection and that they work well together. And, Cliff starts to care for her over the course of these 6 to 8 issues. And this leads us to the first assignment that then she is sent on. Doom Patrol is tasked with apprehending 3 young metahumans. Pedro Pena, one of the kids from the, Shazam. Shen Li Men, a member of the Authority. And her partner, Kay Chalice. So they're on the run. They're, just vagrant, destitute, young 20-somethings, late teens kids. It's very much like a sort of X-Men setup, I think. But we're not following the X-Men. We're following the bad guys. So this is what the first issue is going to be. Doom Patrol is sent out to subdue the 3 metahumans. It goes horribly wrong. Rex Mason is immediately killed by Swift, who is, again, the member of the Authority. She's the one with bird wings. She's the Authority's version of Hawk Girl, essentially. Swift screams at Kay to run, and this whole time we're seeing Kay Chalice, Crazy Jane in the main universe, for anyone unaware. She is horrified. She's terrified. She doesn't know really what's happening. She's confused. She runs away. Pedro, he doesn't have the powers of Shazam or anything like that, just because who cares? And I never liked that. I never liked them splitting it up like that either. So he has some random power or ability. Cliff and Carrie then separate from the group as they're trying to handle Shen and Pedro. They chase after Kay, who, when cornered in like a back alley or this warehouse or whatever, wherever it is, she has a breakdown. Kay starts getting shaky. She starts crying horribly. It's just a sickening sight. It's so sad. She's panicked. She is utterly terrified. And what happens when regular Kay is terrified? The personalities come out to protect her. She turns into a different personality and erupts in a fiery blast or some sort of projection of energy or plasma or whatever it is. And she destroys Cliff Steele. He pushes Carrie out of the way, or she gets, she's catching up to him and she witnesses Cliff Steele just... He gets hit by this wave. Meanwhile, Pedro is killed. Shen Li Men soars into the air looking for Kay when she's blasted by the electrocutioner and captured by Larry Trainer and Tara. Carrie, meanwhile, watches in horror as Kay switches back to her regular form. She's back. She doesn't know where she is. Cliff Steele's body is smoldering on the ground, his muscles contracting as they dry to a burnt ruin. Feeble gargling gasps from his lost lips and tongueless mouth just sound out as Carrie, it's just a close-up shot of Carrie's horrified face, of Kay's horrified, confused face. She doesn't remember what she did. She doesn't know what she did. And then we just get a boom, a just solid cut of Cliff's just horribly decimated corpse. Well, not a corpse. He's still alive. His body. Kay vomits in horror. She starts screaming and crying for Shen to come and help her, to take her away. She doesn't know where she is anymore. And then she stops. She's, a classic telepath taking over effect. And her eyes become clear. And her voice is focused. Perhaps you can have, like, the swirls around her head denoting telepathy. Her dialogue balloon changes, or the font, the typeface in the words that she speaks, it changes to something else, just to clearly convey that someone else is now in control. And she speaks with a voice that isn't her own, directed to Agent Kelly, who denounces her and the Doom Patrol. And then it cuts to a panel that shows a shadowy man. It's like a close-up, like, he's facing this way, and it's just a shadow of his, the side of his face and real close on his mouth. Small little thought bubbles speak in reply to what he says. So he goes, "What is your name?" And then the small little thought balloon appears next to it, and it's tiny little words. It's unintelligible. And then the man replies, "I need you to get out of there, Miss Flit. Bring her here. Flit, of course, being one of K's personalities. K's eyes change and the Flit personality takes over and she teleports away. That's the one that teleports. And she leaves Carrie alone and she races over to Cliff's ruined body. The big reveal at the end of the first issue is the antagonist, Mento. That's right. The classic character who I doubt anybody really remembers, Mento, is the one that took over her. Flit teleports Kay to the high-class home of Steve Drayton, is that what his name is? Dayton? Steve Dayton, I think. And his wife, Rita Farr. And then it's revealed that it's sort of a Jan and Antonia Zabinski story. They were a Polish couple in the 30s and 40s who worked to help Jews and, any other begotten people escape the country, escape Europe from the Nazis. And that's exactly what Mento and Rita are doing for metahumans. They're helping them escape, trying to free them from the country, a veritable underground railroad. And eventually this culminates, the series continues on, like I said, it's only 6 or 8 issues, with a brutal civil war. This is kind of where the Fahrenheit aspect of it, Cliff becomes the robot man, Carrie becomes disillusioned, maybe Cliff does. I like to think that Cliff would as well, with, what happened to him, because it's RoboCop, essentially. So they become disillusioned, very much like Montag in Fahrenheit 451, and this brawl breaks out between the Doom Patrol, the ones loyal to Calder, and whoever's on the side of Carrie and Cliff. It's not many of them. They are outnumbered. They're the underdogs, as they would be, because it's the absolute universe. And that's like the whole thing, is that the heroes are not the heroes. They are the underdogs. So it culminates with the utter destruction of the organization, of their base, and of Miles Calder himself with his very own Titanomachy. Titanomachy, I still don't know how you pronounce it. The Titans themselves, the Titans that he founded and brought together, fight each other to the death and utter destruction. And his last words are Titanomachy. Fuck me. Titanomachy. He dies, says that right before Carrie Kelly. And then it ends. And she escapes along with whoever else is on her side by the end of it, along with Cliff. Cliff would survive. But now I bet you're wondering about a certain other character. Absolute Slade Wilson. Well, he, for the most part of this series, is a normal-looking dude. He's an older man. He has the white hair, goatee, and all that, but both eyes. He's got both of them. And that changes now. He is horribly wounded on one side of his face to give some further reasoning for why he has the black and orange down the center. And since this is absolute DC, it can't just be that he gets his eyes slashed out or whatever and has to wear an eye patch. Instead, Slade and Changeling have a horrible beef between each other. He's the one who calls him Beast Boy all the time and gets that started. You can... depending on how far you can go in this comic, you could just do some really messed up stuff that discusses, assault and grooming with Slade and Tara and perhaps Beast Boy, but I won't talk about that. So just know that they don't like each other. This becomes a sort of Loki versus Heimdall to take from Ragnarok. So they duke it out during the grand finale, the great battle, the Titanomachy, and Changeling fights Slade. They wind up in some kind of flooded area, pipe bursts, or there's like a swimming pool that they do laps in or whatever. They wind up somewhere that it's wet. It's a torrential downpour happens, maybe. Maybe there's someone who can control the weather that they've been experimenting on, and they break out during this moment and unleash horrible weather effects. Anyway, the Doom Patrol headquarters is destroyed. Changeling, as they're fighting in the water, becomes Vibrio Volnificus and overtakes parts of Slade's body. And that strange Latin word that I just said is a necrotizing fasciitis, aka flesh-eating disease. That's right. Beast Boy, Changeling, can become a flesh-eating disease in the absolute DC universe. So he becomes that. He wills himself into this flesh-eating disease itself, and he overcomes Slade over different parts of his body. He's writhing and screaming in pain in the water, and just slops of his fucking body are coming off of him. The side of his face, it comes off in a big wet chunk of just ruined, rotten flesh, and just blood. And it's just an awful sight. And he orders the nearby electrocutioner, don't forget he's still here, who has remained loyal to the Doom Patrol, to blast the water to kill himself and Changeling. And of course, then we see who lives, who dies. Miles Calder dies. He says his final words to Carrie. She and Cliff escape with whoever they can. The end of Absolute Doom Patrol. I will take my Eisner now, please. Now, this next one is, I think, my second favorite. This is Absolute Aquaman. It's gonna be coming, so, this really doesn't do much. I imagine. How can you not do Absolute Aquaman? But here's my pitch for Absolute Aquaman. He is the son of an eldritch abomination. It's Dunwich Horror, Call of Cthulhu, Shadow over Innsmouth. That's the main sort of genres and stories that I'm drawing from with this one. But Aquaman is the villain of this Absolute Aquaman series. Mera is the protagonist, because I do love Mera. I think she's one of my favorite characters. Her name in the Absolute Universe is Esmeralda Vizcardi. That's an easy way to humanize her in a way, to be Mera as her nickname for Esmeralda. And Vizcardi comes from her co-creator in real life. She is an Italian-American who has, strangely enough, red hair, but not normal red hair. Almost as bright as the sun itself, red hair. That's odd, right? So she's working as a private investigator, detective, whatever, somewhere on the East Coast. And she is hired by the horribly distraught parents to find their daughter, Stephanie Brown. She ran off several days ago with her older boyfriend. She's in high school. He's college age or beyond. And his name is Jason Todd. They tracked her phone, which went offline recently, a couple days ago, to a small town in Maine, Amnesty Bay, which is already such an ominous name to begin with. And Mera is paid exorbitantly after the police and the federal officials did nothing to help the parents of Stephanie Brown, and she takes the case. So, Amnesty Bay is pretty much Innsmouth, except just updated to the modern times. It's an upsettingly downtrodden town. Clearly it once had a golden age, but that is long gone now by the time that we reach it with Mera. It's in disrepair and held together, but just barely. Shops on Main Street are all vacant. They're for rent, etc. Stuff's boarded up. Some homes are burnt out. I imagine Mera, I don't know, either she takes a bus, similar to Innsmouth, or she drives her own car there. But either way, she's going to be riding into town. It's going to be long horizontal panels as she's going, and she's looking at everything. We get some establishing shots here and there. The strangest thing that she sees are some homes that are burnt down. Here and there, dotted around. Strangely, almost like in a chaotic pattern. And there are strange symbols painted over the charred ruins of these houses. And as the series progresses, Mera's ancestry is revealed, again, similarly to that of the Shadow over Innsmouth, and it is used to explain her red hair. As a result of past breeding with the Atlanteans, which are just what humans call them. In reality, they are called Tam-Iranons. Specifically, you can tell I like this part, because I really went all in. Specifically, Mera is related to a Tam-Irayon named Quir-i-Under. I'll write them on the video so you can see the Lovecraftian spelling, but she is related to that one. The Atlanteans are just disgusting, hairy fish humanoids. They're the deep ones, but I think it would be far more disturbing if they had bright red hair or dark matted red hair, just because what kind of fucked up creature is both an amphibian but it has hair? They also have large, glowing, almond-shaped eyes to just add to the uncomfortableness of them all. And I think that this could be a good way to introduce a long-term Aquaman villain, the Shaggy Man, as some kind of elderly Atlantean or Tam-Iranan who is just massive in size, and that's why he's so big, is because it's an ancient entity. Boom, there you have it. If you haven't already figured it out. It's the absolute version of the Tamaranians, you know, the ones that Starfire is a race of, but this time, Mera is absolute Starfire, and Aquaman is the villain. That is where I am going with Absolute Aquaman. And over the course of the story, as she stays in the town, as she, you know, it's more or less, it's like a procedural, what is that one? The Mayor of Easton or Easttown, whatever it was called. Something like that, I think. It's kind of like that. Over the story, as she investigates further, her mind becomes muddied, and her powers begin to start manifesting themselves now that she's in this closer proximity to the Atlanteans. You know, she has a hydrokinesis or whatever her powers are. And then the big reveal at the very end. You never see Aquaman until the very final issues. She and Arthur were made to be engaged as some kind of horrible, cultish, arranged marriage. But her father, upon learning that his wife had taken part in the Curry clan's misdoings of abomination and filth, stole away in the middle of the night with young Mera when she was just a girl. Mera's mother is present in the story. Her body has just become abused by the unnatural forces of living in the derelict Amnesty Bay. And eventually we do discover what happens to Stephanie Brown. Don't worry, it's not that bad. Stephanie Brown has been indoctrinated with what the locals call the cure, which is possibly one of the worst things that I came up with for this experiment. A bile secreted by the Atlantean seed mothers to ensure that human women can handle the Atlantean pregnancy. Because sometimes it does not go as well as it did for Mera's mother. Mera, however, uses her hydrokinesis to remove the cure from Stephanie's body and saves her from becoming this horrible breeding machine for the disgusting Atlanteans that live in the waves outside of Amnesty Bay. And the duo are able to narrowly escape. But unfortunately, as happens in a Lovecraftian story, they are unable to truly stop what is happening, what has happened, and what will continue to happen in Amnesty Bay. And just like her father all those 30-something years ago, Mera too steals away from Amnesty Bay, saving the life of a young girl. Now, it either ends with her running away with Stephanie Brown, and they just escape both, or she gives Stephanie the keys to her car, or like takes her to a train station in a nearby town or a city, like the next major city they escape to. And she sends, whatever it is, however it works, Mera sends Stephanie home and elects to return to Amnesty Bay in hopes of finishing off whatever evil lives there. Dun dun dun, Aquaman. Next one is one that I thought would work out, but I started losing it a little bit with this one, I'll be honest. It's the shortest, this is the shortest pitch that I have. And that is the absolute gods. Theoretically, either the old gods existed in the universe that became absolute once Darkseid appeared, and they did destroy themselves in Ragnarok or whatever it was, which is how the formation of the new gods occurred. But seemingly the new gods don't exist in the absolute universe. Or do they? We'll find out later. Or maybe Ragnarok has just yet to happen. And at the time of Darkseid's arrival and corruption of the world, and then his appearance in this universe fucked something up. So now there are these strange metaphysical incarnations of the old gods who are still around in some way, who are living in this distraught and twisted world that they can't really understand anymore. And they know something is up. They know something has like, there's a parasite in their existence now. Maybe they don't realize that they were bound to die anyway in leading into the fourth world and the new gods, but they know that something affected their destiny. And these are the archetypes of the various pantheons. They're the only entities, like I said, that are aware of Darkseid, sort of, in a way. Because I think the best way to describe it is that they're like the Jedi in the prequel trilogy, in that they're aware that there is this great darkness that is overtaking them and affecting their abilities and their existence, but they just can't really figure out what exactly it is or how to stop it. They also possess human hosts, kind of like, Donald Blake and Thor, or what Darkseid does in several of his appearances. Mostly, I think he did it in Final Crisis. So the gods, the absolute gods, are Olgren, who is an established old god in DC, Wotan, Eve, Gog, Loki, spelled L-O-K-K-E, Dionysus, Bast, and Hermes. That roster could change very easily. That's just the ones that I came up with. And what this all ends up being is a commentary on the erasure and the forgetting of the gods and, pagan mythology and all of these other things that have been kind of wiped away by the widespread hand of Christianity and the domineering religions of the past thousands of years. So it's that, and it's these old ideas in this new all-controlling conformist world, and what it means for these entities to be forgotten and utterly displaced by the unnatural control of Darkseid and the anti-life. In a way, they're refugees of a world that no longer exists. And that's all I got for the Absolute Gods. Not my strongest pitch. Moving on now to Absolute Titans. Of course you gotta follow up the hit series Absolute Doom Patrol. So after the finale of the Doom Patrol, they are the team made up of, Carrie and Cliff and whoever else came with them and survived. They're on the run. They're trying to escape the country. They form the Titans, as sort of a spit in the face of Miles Calder. Maybe that's the final words to Carrie. She says something along the lines of, we'll show you who the Titans really are. She says something to him in the moment of his death about, being the Titans that he always said they would be. It's a destitute road trip across absolute America. This also continues the Fahrenheit 451 similarities once Montag escapes into the wilderness, along with aspects of, I think, Stephen King's Firestarter and Children of Men. It introduces and kills off various absolute versions of DC characters. Deathstroke is also revealed to be alive. This can be more of an ongoing series, I suppose, because there's more possibility and potential for it to continue. But Deathstroke is revealed to be alive within the first issue. His body is now covered in some kind of intricate cybernetic armor. His mask befits a man with but a black void on one side of his face after it was eaten away by Changeling's virus. And he, of course, is tasked with hunting the Titans down. Which, after I started writing it, I think it's somewhat similar to Earth 1 Teen Titans. But who the hell remembers, or more importantly, cares about that dead universe? And of course, this is also a continuation of Mento and Rita's story of saving the metahumans. Now, the roles are reversed. Now, they have the opportunity to help Carrie and the others once they realize the wrong and the error of their ways and attempting to make amends in some way. It also made me think of Legion. I think season 2 is where they really build into the sort of freedom fighter, saving mutants aspects of it. Okay, I lied earlier about the absolute Aquaman thing. So I think if I had to rate my favorites, this one that I'm about to tell you is probably my absolute favorite of them all. I don't know. I just really love these final couple ones. I had a lot of fun with this one and the next two. So number 5, my fifth pitch for Absolute DC Comics. Absolute Red Tornado. Matilda Hunkel is the main character. That's right, Ma Hunkel, the original Red Tornado, who is a housewife and loving grandmother from a suburb in upstate New York. She is home one evening, cooking dinner for her entire family. Perhaps it's Christmas time. Everybody's together, happy, loving each other. She and her husband are there, and they have actually adopted children. They were unable to have kids, and we see that through establishing shots showing, family portraits, and, one of their kids is black or Hispanic or Native American, whatever. It's clear that they've adopted these kids, and it's clear that they've adopted a couple over the course of their younger years. And now those kids are grown up. They've brought their families home for the holidays, and they have a nice, lovely house. And she's such a sweet and kind woman. And some of her grandkids in this opening segment even call her, just to be fun, Granny Goodness. And she's cooking a big turkey or a ham or something. And the kids are running around playing. Maybe it's Christmas Eve, and they're so excited. They let the kids maybe open a box, like a present or two. That's something people do, is you get one present to open on Christmas Eve. Or maybe she's cooking gingerbread cookies or Christmas cookies or something, and she takes them out and they're nice and warm and hot. And then an alien ship crashes into the home, wiping out all of the nearby blocks of houses, eradicating everyone except for Ma Hunkel. She is enraptured during the blast from the strange alien craft by, get this, a strange red tornado of cosmic energies encircles her and protects her as she watches in slow motion as it's like the scene in Terminator 2 where her whole family is just eviscerated in this blast. Cut to, flash forward, 15 years later, and she becomes the Red Tornado. But we'll get to that later, because we see this new character, perhaps established in the first issue or established sometime in issue 2, depending on how you want to write the story laid out. His name is Stephen Wolf, W-U-L-F. He is a survivalist and big game hunter nicknamed the Ambush Bug. You can see I can barely contain my excitement. He even wears one encapsulated in a little necklace. It's classic most dangerous game / Craven sort of idea. He's hired out as a mercenary around the world, typically by authoritarian regimes. He was currently working on hunting the Bawana beast when a similar alien ship crashes nearby within his vicinity that he is also encapsulated by its blast. And it enraptures him equally in a horrible suit of alien technology. And then we again get the flash forward 15 years. Ma Hunkel takes on, I suppose, what could only be described as a Santa Claus-esque role in superheroics around the world. She has been unable to die, veritably immortal, but very much able to be hurt and wounded. The self-regenerating red tornado suit that encapsulates her once feeble and elderly body engages in anything she could possibly need or imagine or do. She speaks to it as well within her mind as some sort of vast mental plane. And she speaks to it as herself, an elderly woman. And the suit speaks back to her as a youthful, beautiful version of herself. And the alien crafts, I don't know what it could be. it turns them into these biomechanical warriors, essentially. So, like I noted, they can still get hurt. She can get an arm cut off, scream, feel it happen, but it'll grow the arm back and it'll reconstitute the suit over itself. It's a horrible body horror idea for this kindly old grandmother to have to deal with. It's just the absolute worst possible thing imaginable. First, she had to watch her whole family be blown up and horribly decimated, and then she's just forever trapped in this Red Tornado suit. She starts going by the name Red Tornado over the past 15 years here and there, and then, eventually she starts building her way up. In a way, she's kind of the world's first superhero of the Absolute Universe. Now, what are the suits? What is the ship that crashed for her and for Stephen Wolf, the ambush bug? His, of course, will be like a green, different designed version, the absolute ambush bug version, essentially. They are, in reality, drones of a much larger technological cosmic entity that translates to English as Mother Eye. That's right, it's not Brother Eye, it is Mother Eye. Mother Eye spawns these alien crafts as sort of vessels and extensions of itself. It is an ultra-advanced piece of machinery built eons ago by a lost race. Mother Eye is just huge, massive, sprawling technological monstrosity in space. It's not humanoid in any way. It's just this vast complex that has also encapsulated vast planets within itself to begin harvesting for resources for itself. So what is Mother Eye's gimmick? Why is it doing this? Why did it trap a old grandmother and a headhunter guy? Well, millions of years ago, Mother Eye, when it was created, analyzed the ever-expanding universe and discovered something. The Big Crunch, which is the retraction of the universe. It is a real-world theory that people have regarding our existence itself. So, in preparation for the Big Crunch, Mother Eye began an initiative. The Hunters. The Manhunters, if you will. These devices are sent out, still in contact with Mother Eye in some way, as like little drones and analyzers and whatnot. They form themselves a protective membrane, exoskeleton around a member of the planet's species, collect biological information on both the race and the planet itself for Mother Eye to then diagnose the usefulness of that planet as a source for its continued construction and what she needs to build her escape. Because Mother Eye doesn't want to be involved in the Big Crunch. That'll destroy it. So, she has been constructing a way to escape reality into the bleed and outrun, essentially, the Big Crunch. And that is what Mother Eye has been working on for thousands of years. And that is essentially what is going on in the background. It's a horrible story with really no a possible way for our hero to defeat this villain that she doesn't even know about. As far as Ma Hunkel is aware, this suit is just some alien craft that has bonded with her for the past 15 years. It's the only thing she speaks to. If you can take this and work it into a modern contemporary commentary on how people are now treating AI and, Chat GPT as bouncing ideas off of, or even treating like therapy or talking to it as it's a real thing. But there's far more darker purposes behind it. Just like in real life, I suppose. But that's not all that's introduced in Absolute Red Tornado. You can really tell how into this one I was, I think, because Absolute Blue Beetle is later introduced in a later issue via an aerospace and defense corporation named Morrow Garrett. It is a rival to the Lazarus Corporation, and they were actually able to, several years in the past, they gathered a small specimen of Ma Hunkle's hunter suit. You know, when it broke off in some battle that she was having, or a fight, or she was damaged, and Morrow Garrett people were nearby and were able to collect a sample of this device. So they've been working to reverse engineer this technological brilliance that was found in a battle against whoever. And that's what they've been doing for years. And that's how we meet Ted Cord and Maxine Hunkle, who is Matilda's niece and only surviving relative. She wasn't there that Christmas. She was somewhere else. They are employed by Morrow Garrett Industries as defense designers. They're like the primary heads of the project that has been experimenting on the Red Tornado's like little technological piece. And eventually they work that into the Blue Beetle suit, and, you know, acting as their own sort of, this is the future of military industrial complex, is we've reverse engineered this piece of alien technology, figured out how it works for the most part, and we turned it into this prototype suit that we call the Blue Beetle because for some reason it looks like that. or they design, whatever. The big reveal for Absolute Red Tornado is this. Now, don't listen to this if you want to read it when it comes out. The reveal is that Darkseid's former inner circle, whom he believes did not do enough to serve their master, the Lord of Apocalypse, in his former existence, have been reformed and created in the Absolute Universe. They exist for the express purpose to give them a happy and fulfilling life, only for Darkseid to act in some way through divine intervention and rip it away from them and torture their minds. Ma Hunkle is Granny Goodness. Stephen Wolf is Steppenwolf, Darkseid's uncle. And, you know, as you continue, you can introduce more. Vermin Wunderbar, the others. Desaad. I bet Darkseid would really like to create and then torture the fuck out of Desaad. Glorious Godfrey you can do. Calabac. He hates Calabac, his son. Dr. Bedlam. They're all revealed to exist in the Absolute Universe. They have no powers or abilities aside from maybe Ma Hunkle and Stephen Wolf. Stephen Wolf, sorry. And I don't know what else you could really do with them. I haven't thought about that or who would be introduced or when. But that is the reveal. Is that the main character, the protagonist, is actually an alternate reality version of Granny Goodness created for the express purpose for Darkseid to release some pent-up anger. But that's not it. Because over the course of the series, even the female Furies are introduced alongside the other apocalyptic elite. But the Furies are a group of teenage girls who are being experimented on by the Morrow Garrett Company and Industries for the Blue Beetle project because they discovered that for whatever reason, the Blue Beetle suit functions far better on female specimens than male. And there you go. That's my pitch for all Absolute Red Tornado. Now we move on to the penultimate absolute pitch. And that is Absolute Birds of Prey. You ready for this one? This one's gonna turn some heads and probably upset some people, I think. So, but I hope it upsets the right people. Lucy Lane, aka the Huntress, is introduced in Absolute Birds of Prey. She is an informant for the Omega Men organization, freedom fighter group. Her codename is Theta within their organization, and she is a full-on freedom fighter / terrorist. She, quote, sees the world as it truly is, you know, unlike her sister, Lois, or their father. And, you know, you can work something about how birds of prey have incredible vision or something. It's, you know, if you really want to do that, you could do like a flashback of Lucy and Lois as daughter or as kids talking to their dad, and he's teaching them about stuff. He's like, well, you know, honey, that hawk up there is a bird of prey, and they actually have exquisite vision, you know, something like that. Much of this book is going to have to be a flashback just due to the events of Absolute Superman and the fact that Lois has changed sides. But the main reason that I came up with this is to create the Lucy Lane Jimmy Olsen relationship in the Absolute Universe. That was my my trampoline point, my spring launch point for this idea was expressly that. But as the series progresses, Lucy stops associating with the Omega Men because she believes that they need to go further than they do. They need to push harder at Lazarus and the ruling classes. The series becomes an espionage story of abstract villainy. There's a focus on corruption, sexual exploitation, trafficking, government-sponsored bigotry, and conspiracies. Domestic terrorism is outright committed by our heroes. This can be DC's answer to Denise Comp's The Ultimates. Other inspiration would be the novel Shoot the Women First, and I think it would be pretty neat to take some heavy Pussy Riot inspiration, the Russian sort of anti-government punk group and political activist group, with Lucy Lane acting as an Emma Goldman-esque anarchist. And I thought the best way that you can do that and really get minds thinking and express it fully is to have some quotes displayed at like the end or the beginning of each issue, or at least the first issue. So the ones that I chose are, quote, "A political act of violence is similar to the terrors of the atmosphere, culminating in storm and lightning." And at the end, once you turn the final page, you see, "Unless we have become part of humanity, we cannot even faintly understand the just indignation that accumulates in a human soul, the burning, surging passion that makes the storm inevitable." Obviously, we would have to show something that really flicked the switch to get Lucy to turn this way and act this way based on, like, you know, her upbringing with Sam Lane and Lois. You know, I haven't thought about what that would be, what her watershed moment is, but it'd be something. I think the main hero, nope, that's wrong. The main villain is Carl Mannheim. This version of the character is named after the version in Superman: The Dark Side, which I think works quite well. He is a high-ranking board member of Lazarus and serves as the primary antagonist. The person under him is, I think, the most creative idea I've had this whole episode and this whole experiment. So, Carl Mannheim is the main antagonist. His, to use the TV trope, his dragon, his second in command, the person he sends out to enact his dirty doings, is a Japanese woman named Tani Taki. She is a woman who was experimented on in Arc F, located inside of Mount Fuji. And based out of those genetic experiments at Arc F, Tani Taki was turned into a visceral were-tiger abomination. Say hello to Absolute Talkie Tawny, the talking tiger from the Shazam Captain Marvel comics. I think it's a pretty clever idea. Come on, Tani Taki, because it's Japanese, so it would be, you know, it's reversed around, so it's not as obvious as it is right away. I love it. It's my favorite thing I came up with this whole thing. She was actually bought several years ago as Mannheim's personal bodyguard, and then, sickeningly enough, an eventual lover. Like I said, the story arcs and sort of cultural touchstones that this series will be discussing are dark. She is controlled as well by him because, how's he going to ensure that she doesn't just kill him in his sleep or something? So that is why she is controlled by an implant that is dubbed the Word of Power, just to have another sort of Captain Marvel Shazam illusion. Other heroic characters introduced are Dinah Lance, the Black Canary. Cybernetically altered experimental bionic vocal cords are her thing, which is looping it back around to Linda Lewis, aka Lady Lark from the Squadron Supreme, as a kind of Ouroboros of a character. Because obviously Black Canary exists, Lady Lark and the Squadron Supreme is created as a parody of her. It's established that she has the experimental bionic vocal cords that allow her to do the same thing Black Canary does. So why not? Because I love Mark Gruenwald, even though I'm aware he didn't make the character. Why not just take that idea and work it back around, back to DC? And then in like 30 years, we could see what Marvel does with it. The other character is Carol Ferris. She is a member of the ruling class, the upper echelon of Lazarus, but she is a defector who helps fund Lucy Lane's Birds of Prey in secret. Birds of Prey, if you haven't realized it yet, is Lucy's extremist faction. And I picture Carol acting as Stellan Skarsgård's Luthen Rael? I don't know how you pronounce it, really. I don't remember how you say it. Luthen from Andor. The final character that I have, squared away as being introduced, of course, is Helena Bertinelli. Now, I know what you're thinking. Blake, you already said that Lucy Lane is called the Huntress. She's the absolute Huntress, right? Yes. Helena is a sort of aide-de-camp lieutenant, I suppose, to Lucy within the Birds of Prey. She is a full-on believer, but she's also an heiress to a grand fortune who sacrificed personal comforts and ran off from her family to join this budding rebellion. And yes, I did just copy that from Vel Sartha's page on Wikipedia because I think it's a great premise for a character such as this in this story. Helena won't take on the name Huntress until near the end of the series, or quite later in it, depending on how long it runs for. And it'll happen when Lucy is either killed or horribly wounded, thus becoming the Oracle. And of course, Jimmy Olsen is involved. He leaves the Omega Men and he joins up with the Birds of Prey. You can introduce other DC comic characters as the series formulates past like the initial couple issues and build off of that, have characters come and go, characters live and die, etc. I think that sounds just like a really fun book. And I'm quite happy with how it came out. Now here we are, the final 7th pitch for my absolute DC Comics pitches. It's surprisingly short, but I feel like that works for it because it's too sprawling of an idea to really add further context with. That is Absolute KAMANDI. Now, if you're a fan of the channel or a fan of the podcast, you will know that I absolutely love Jack Kirby's KAMANDI. And only Jack Kirby's KAMANDI. I refuse to read it after he was the writer and artist on it. Arc K is where our setting takes place. And it is known within JK Holdings and whatever other companies and, shadow organizations run the arcs. They refer to Arc K as the arc that was lost. And it is located in South America. Specifically, somewhere in or around Rio de Janeiro. Rio is utterly destroyed after a bioweapon that was being concocted or experimenting with in Arc K was accidentally triggered, which released from the vault and subsequently ruined the entire east coast of Brazil via a terrible ecological disaster. It poisons the whole side of the country and the majority of South America. Arc K's defenses are activated or sabotaged, and this causes dramatic earthquakes to take place, rendering the whole area, the whole country, into something entirely of ruin and demise. The surface of Brazil is just ripped apart. It's a dead zone. It's an exclusion zone. The world government, or whatever is happening in the Absolute Universe, they have dubbed it an exclusion zone. It's like Chernobyl, but far, far worse. No one is allowed to go there. It is cut off by government sort of boundaries and checkpoints and, patrols on land and sea and air. They don't want anything getting out. They don't want anyone going in. And they especially don't want anyone going in and coming back out. So this is revealed in a cold opening of the scientists conducting the tests and then it getting triggered and all this shit going down roughly 20 or 30 years prior to the premise of the comic, which would seemingly be in modern day because that's just like all the other Absolute stuff. So this is taking place in the 90s, I suppose. How great is that to think about, right? The 90s was 30 years ago. And so it's happening, and, everything's going bad. Boom! You turn the page, and it's a splash, a hard cut, as what few survivors there remain escape into Command D of Arc K. That's like the refuge, like the poisonous gas is filling these chambers. They're running down the hall. People are, their boils are popping. Their skin is cooking alive. They're just horrible scenes of brutality as the earth around them is being ripped apart and just, it's going bad. It's a horrible event. They keep it under wraps in some way. Who knows? Whatever they have to do. It's wow. It was a dirty bomb, a terrorist attack is the global understanding of what happened that fateful day in Rio de Janeiro. So the survivors escape, and the world at large is fed a complete lie. And then we cut ahead in time to the modern day. KAMANDI is about 18 by the time that he escapes Arc K. I think it would work better if you steal from Fallout 3 as opposed to KAMANDI being like the final survivor with his aging, was his grandfather or something like that, or like the only two that remain, and he has to set out. Give it something a little more oomph. And I think stealing from Fallout 3 works perfectly for that. So tensions brew. There's crazy shit going down in the arc that I'll discuss just momentarily. But what you need to know is that KAMANDI escapes, and instead of finding the ruined Statue of Liberty in the flooded area like he does in the original series, he instead comes across the ruined statue of Christ the Redeemer, lurking partially, it's sunk down and the oceans flowed up as the world crumbled around it. And it's now in a flooded area, and he paddles a boat past the massive, Christ in the crucifixion pose, lurching partway out of the waters. We introduce then classic characters such as Ben Boxer, who is in the original comics a android man. In this, he is a smuggler and prospector. That is another thing I'm stealing from Fallout, this time Fallout New Vegas, where prospectors are people who just go into old ruins and find anything valuable they can. He is also a former Lazarus Army guy, soldier, and a cyborg. He goes into the exclusion zone of Brazil to retrieve, various things for various people at various prices, essentially. And then something would happen where, maybe a gunship notices him as he's trying to escape with KAMANDI, and they get stranded there. He is shit out of luck. Maybe he has like a mothership that he was returning to out in the sea. And as he finds KAMANDI, he takes pity on him, something along those lines. He's a jerk with a heart of gold. And as they're going back out in under the guise of night through the waters of ruined Rio, back to the ship, now that that's what it is. He meets KAMANDI. They come across KAMANDI and he work together to, steal something, find something nearby, I guess, whatever it has to be. They work together. They start setting out to boat at night to the mothership out at sea. Massive explosion, splash page if you want. Their faces are just bathed in color and light of this fiery explosion as a nearby military gunship destroys the people sneaking in, and then they get spotted themselves. A spotlight hits them in the dark waters. But you could even introduce some creatures that lurk in those waters as well, that get annoyed or learn about things once the explosion goes off. And it's a big climactic scene in the issue where they're racing, or, they're swimming back to shore or whatever. This is where you reveal Ben Boxer's a cyborg. Maybe KAMANDI is about to get attacked by an evil mutant shark or something, and Ben Boxer, he reaches for a punch and his fist expands out as a giant robot hand or something. I don't know. Or he shoots something out of his chest. Whatever. But here's the biggest change of all. KAMANDI is not going to be a blonde-haired, blue-eyed little white boy. No, this takes place in Brazil. KAMANDI is going to be dark-skinned of some kind. I don't know how brown, but I don't want him to be like Sunspot, who keeps getting lighter and lighter as the years go on. So instead he'll be, tanned deeply, or Afro-Brazilian, I think might be the proper term. Something along those lines. And the Tupi, T-U-P-I, I don't know how you pronounce it, indigenous people who were once lived in Brazil, and, there's a lot of ancestry leading back to them, and this general area that this story is set, are a heavy inspiration for the clans and tribes that we do discover. How you gotta have mutant animal people. We have them in fucking absolute Batman, so you can have them living in actual society down here as well. Maybe even further into the future, if this series continues, you can have absolute Killer Croc relocate to absolute Brazil and live out life with fellow mutant animals, even though he's a man turned into an animal, and they're, I guess, animals turned into animal men. Maybe he finds a nice village of crocodiles or something. But I want there to be a distinct visual inspiration and social and everything like that from the indigenous people of this area of South America. Even in the arc itself, the ruling people that, the survivors that escape into KAMANDI, instead of finding God or modern religion, they instead fall out of the modern beliefs that, one charismatic survivor leads them to believe is the reason that they wound up here. Maybe they were hired on. They're like, well, this is God's gift to the world, what we're working on here in Arc F. Instead, they fall out of modern beliefs, and then you can insert Brazilian traditions and indigenous myths and beliefs itself. But how can you have a absolute adaptation of KAMANDI set in ruined Brazil and not introduce Yara Flor? So Yara Flor, she is not going to be a girl from Idaho or whatever the fuck the mainstream version is. She is in no way related to anything American. She is fully a person who grew up in this ruined Brazil and Rio de Janeiro. She is from a clan of humans. I don't want humans to be outright, full Planet of the Apes-esque. Although I suppose you could do something like that with, the virus that they were working on. Maybe if, it's meant to be this, it's meant to be essentially a biological nuclear bomb. But, nuclear bombs do have the added effect of radiation poisoning afterward. So maybe this bioweapons form of radiation poisoning for any survivors is a dulling of the mind. And, it eats away at the brain or whatever it is, and it makes them stupid. So you could still have the kind of cavemen people. But I think it would be very neat to see her become the kind of flower to KAMANDI. And for anyone who hasn't read the original KAMANDI series, Flower is essentially Nova from Planet of the Apes. She is the human love interest that is introduced by the benevolent animal people who take KAMANDI to a human reserve that they run, and they just kind of let the humans live out life in safety so they're not hunted by other animal people. But I think that is just too... It's an idea that worked once in Planet of the Apes and kind of in KAMANDI, because I think Jack Kirby does give her a bit more agency than the fucking Planet of the Apes film that they based the comic off of did. But I want to fully give Yara far more agency than that. so I don't want her to just be, wow, look at that hot young chick. Oh my goodness, wow, I can't believe Charlton Heston get with her. And she doesn't talk. Woohoo! Isn't that great? I don't want that. I don't want that to happen. I want Yara Flor to be as tenacious, as tough, as invigorated as KAMANDI himself, because she has been living out in the wastes of Brazil. She hasn't been in the, in the vault like he has. And that's a very, sort of a classic trope as well. It's kind of a Neytiri, Jake Sully kind of thing. You can derive from that, those kind of stories. But I think that they, absolute KAMANDI and absolute Yara Flor, they're the ultimate power couple. and the final note I have is I want to institute actual Brazilian mythology and folklore through the lens of this post-apocalyptic. And the final little note I have for this final pitch, is I want to institute actual Brazilian mythology and folklore and beliefs through this lens of a post-apocalyptic scenario that has mutants and like tribal human collectives. In a way, it's 28 years later in ruined Rio. And that's my elevator pitch. In one sentence, that's what absolute KAMANDI is. And there we have it. Those are my pitches for Absolute DC Comic Series. This went on quite a bit longer than I had expected. But I hope you made it through it. I hope you enjoyed. Let me know what you thought in the comments below. What are your pitches for Absolute DC Comics? And what did you think of mine? Would you read any of these comics that I came up with? Let me know. Let me know your thoughts on Brian Michael Bendis returning to Marvel Comics, Phillip Kennedy Johnson going exclusively with Marvel Comics, and of course the return of Vertigo from DC Comics. Very DC heavy episode. That's why I wear my Batman and Joker surfing shirt. I figured it was the perfect chance to wear this bad boy again. As always, check out my Patreon, patreon.com/Smokey's videos, and Etsy, blakety.etsy.com. I talked about that at the top of the show. I also have other podcasts, such as I Need Some Disney, where my Disney-obsessed wife and myself discuss all things Disney-related. And if you're a newcomer here and you made it this far, make sure to check out my YouTube channel, Smokey's Comic Vault, where I discuss comics. This past year has been all about the original Ultimate Marvel Universe. And I will talk to you all next time. Bye!